Hey everyone, it's Dr. Dan Ritchie, president of the Functional Aging Institute, and I'm really excited for today's webinar, even more excited for the release of the Brain Health Trainer course with Ryan Glatt. We've got Ryan on with us today. Ryan's been working on this thing for, I'm not going to tell them how long, Ryan, but quite a while. He is presently working on a master's in applied neuroscience from King's College London. I'm a little jealous that you get to go to London for college as often as you like. So I know you do most of it via correspondence and online. But Ryan has had a passion for the brain, and especially for how we train it as fitness professionals. How can we impact cognitive function? How can we impact it as fitness pros? And so he's going to take us through sort of a short presentation and hopefully really whet your appetite for why you want to become a brain health trainer and look into what Cody and I have been saying is probably the most exciting course we've released, Ryan, since the Functional Aging Group X Specialist about 3 years ago. So as always, everyone, Ryan's going to talk for probably 30 to 35 minutes. At any time you have a question, please type it into the Q&A box. That's much more helpful than the chat box. So you have a Q&A box at the bottom. We have 93 people on live, Ryan. That's awesome. We are recording this. So if you're wondering, oh, can I watch this again? We will make the recording available. But really, we're going to let Ryan talk, and then we'll do Q&A at the end, and I'll moderate that. So Ryan, please take it away.
All right. Thanks, Dan, for that lovely introduction. Everyone, thank you so much for being here. Today's presentation is called Becoming a Brain Health Trainer, and it's about transforming brains for a living. And so my background's in personal training. I've been in the industry for about 10 years. I've gone through several different certifications and different qualifications I've acquired in neuroscience specifically. What's in progress right now, as Dan mentioned, is my master's in applied neuroscience. I'm a certified brain health coach through the Amen Institute. I have a certification in applied neuroscience from the Brain First Training Institute. And I'm a graduate of the Neuroscience Academy. And then, of course, I have a love for the body, getting certified in precision nutrition, taking mentorships with the Institute of Motion, Anatomy Trains, Gray Institute, certification from NSCA in personal training and special populations, of course, FAS and Tai Chi certified. So my personal mission is to see the intersection and marriage of neuroscience, brain health, and the health and fitness industry. Now, why does this matter? Why would we be interested in brain health besides neuroscience being really trendy and cool to think about? And there's several key reasons as to why this matters, not just to me personally, but probably to you as well. Now, brain health needs to be at the forefront for a variety of reasons. Typically what happens is individuals come to us and they start to ask us for goals or to help them achieve a goal, typically ones that are physical. Now, usually when those individuals come to us and they say, well, I want to lose weight or I want to gain more muscle, those are things they think they're supposed to say to a health and fitness professional. Now, if brain health was at the forefront and they knew that we had some sort of specialty or skill set in brain health related programming, they'd probably ask us for what would be a bigger priority to them, which is likely to be brain health. It is true that fear of falling is certainly in the top fears, but I think everyone would agree no matter what your age and no matter what your cognitive status, that brain health is of the utmost concern, either for performance, preventing disease, or otherwise. And as I said, brain health should be the primary outcome measure, not a side effect. If you look at the global burden statistics, what's currently happening is that individuals are suffering from depression, they're suffering from cognitive decline, and those numbers are severely outweighing the numbers associated with pain or orthopedic conditions. It doesn't mean those things aren't important, but brain health should be a primary outcome measure. And now what people are interested in is talking about different things they can do to improve brain health, exercise being one of them. And when they can improve exercise outcomes, then they can actually improve brain health outcomes. Now, typically when we engage in exercise programs, that's a side effect. But what we're interested in is making that more of a primary outcome. Now, your business with your clients only lasts as long as your client lasts. And so ensuring that they have not just physical longevity, but cognitive longevity is also of top concern. And then it's important to make sure your clients can play with their grandkids, but it's even more important to make sure your clients can remember their grandkids' names. So this is a comic we like to show. It's individuals saying, I've been working out for 6 months, but all my gains have been in cognitive function. And so it's a funny comic, but this is actually the future that we foresee in the health and fitness industry. Now, another reason why this matters is the rates of dementia and other chronic diseases are aggressively on the rise, and more than 5 million people in the United States are currently diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. According to the CDC, the number of Americans living with cognitive impairment is equal to the population of New York City. That's a lot of people. So we think of this entire population of the city, double that. Those are the individuals that are struggling with cognitive decline, and that's what the opportunity is. And so if we look at, I think, 300,000 personal trainers in the United States, and an average trainer has about, let's say, 30 people at one given time, and that's not including client turnover. Collectively, as an industry, we have an opportunity to make a serious impact if our exercise and physical activity programs reflect brain health. Now, let's talk about the course of normal aging here. So everyone experiences slight cognitive changes during aging. One of those changes is cognitive decline over time. And this is, of course, normal. Everyone declines physically and cognitively. But what's really likely to happen is most of the people that you're working with are in this preclinical phase. So when we say preclinical, another word for that is subjective cognitive impairment or worried well. The difference between the two is that subjective cognitive impairment is that they've noticed changes in their brain function or memory or attention, but they may not have symptoms that are significant. Or perhaps your brain's changing, but you're not noticing anything. And perhaps you're noticing something, but these aren't detectable in tests. And so this is essentially where the patient knows there's something going on with their brains, but the doctor does not. The worried well may not even have an issue subjectively with their cognition, but they maybe just be worried because they've seen a family member go through changes. They've noticed that they may be seeing loved ones they have go through changes. Perhaps they just have a risk themselves, and they're interested in modifying that. Hello, can you still hear me?
Yep, we still hear you.
Sorry about that. Now, when it comes to the assessment of cognitive decline, the worried well are most likely to have what's called subjective cognitive decline. We just covered that. And subjective SCI, or SCI itself, is specifically, as I said, when there's a noticeable change in your memory, but it's not detectable on tests. And so the worried well are more likely to be a part of your clientele. And this is why it's important to start the brain health conversation. So less than 50% of these individuals have likely consulted a medical professional. And that's why it's important to understand who to refer to and how to refer. And when you refer to a physician, there's different types of physicians you can refer to for brain health assessments or baselines. It can certainly be a general doctor, but can also be a psychiatrist, a neuropsychologist, a neurologist. And encouraging these individuals to take a baseline test is paramount. Now, this is especially true if they're 65 years or older. Most people don't know what to do, and they don't know why they should do it, or some people just think that cognitive decline is a part of normal aging. Now, this process can consist of cognitive testing, symptom questionnaires, or brain imaging, sometimes all of them. Typically, what it consists of is a MoCA, a one-page cognitive screener out of 30 points, which includes a clock drawing, 3D box test, animal naming test, etc. And it's scored out of 30 points, and they use this as a quick screener for cognitive assessment. There's also computerized cognitive assessments, full-blown neuropsychological evaluations, which can be several hours, include pen and paper testing, be more diagnostic and more sensitive, and different types of imaging, like looking at the size of the brain using volumetric MRI, or looking for things like amyloid plaques using PET scans. Now, that's how we can assess cognition, but how does the brain change over the lifespan? Well, we know that well into your 90s, you can have changes to your brain through a process called neuroplasticity. Now, your brain's ability to change in response to experiences is absolutely possible throughout the lifespan, but I don't think what people talk about is the amount of effort, if we see here, the amount of effort required. Now, the reason this is important is because as a fitness professional, especially if you're working with older adults, you have an opportunity to capitalize on modifying their brain health, hopefully for the better. But ideally, as people age, they should put forth more effort for their brain health. And now what happens as people age? They want to put less effort in, they want to take their time, they want to sort of enjoy their lives and not be burdened with all of these things they have to do. But if we can contextualize it in a way that's motivating and enjoyable for people and actually allow them to put more time into their health, we can likely see positive neuroplastic changes well into late adulthood. And what contributes to this trajectory, if you will? Well, it's something called cognitive reserve. And cognitive reserve is sort of a cognitive gas tank that you have throughout the life. And the more you fill it up, the better opportunity you have at keeping your ADLs intact, your activities of daily living, improving your cognitive abilities, improving mental health, and improving behavioral outcomes. This is a bit of a complex chart, but you can see on the left-hand and right-hand side all the things that may contribute to cognitive reserve. And all those things that contribute to cognitive reserve include novel experiences, cognitive training, positive affect or a good mood, education, social support, and modifiable health factors like physical activity, sleep, and nutrition. Now, I might be getting ahead of myself, but I'd like to offer the idea that health and fitness professionals can help with just about all of these. If we focus on modifiable health factors and know that exercise is one of the big ones, obviously as a health and fitness professional, you're either helping to consult or deliver these exercise programs. Education could even be health education, but you can encourage lifelong learning through a variety of different engagements. Social support, a lot of the time people keep their relationships with certain individuals or professionals because of the social interaction. Positive affect, hopefully that you're creating a positive and enjoyable environment for your clients, and then stimulating activities and novel experiences, as well as cognitive training. Now, those last two we're typically not incorporating in the health and fitness industry. Certainly teaching new movements and coming up with new experiences within a session or outside of a session isn't something that people don't always do. But I think that there's an opportunity to integrate more cognitive demand and novel experiences, as well as stimulating activities, into our exercise sessions. And that's one of the things that the Brain Health Trainer course really talks about. Now, how does physical activity impact the brain? Well, there's sort of a circular relationship here between these different factors. You'll hear about molecular changes like changes in BDNF or brain-derived neurotropic factor. That can lead to increases in neurogenesis, the creation of new neurons, or neurogenesis. And then it can also lead to improvements in structural changes such as volumetric changes in the brain. Typically, you've heard about this in the form of growth in the hippocampus. That leads to improvements in cognition and mood. And then that also leads to more participation in physical activity and exercise. And so this whole relationship is really important to understand. And in the Brain Health Trainer course, we dive deep into the micro level changes, which include those molecular and neuronal changes. And then we also dive deep into the macro changes, the changes that occur at higher level regions and networks of the brain. And then, of course, we focus on these behavioral changes, improvements in cognition and mood. And when we talk about cognition, we're talking about attention, memory, processing speed, executive functioning, etc. And then, of course, we also talk about how to make an exercise plan that best reflects these changes and how to modify that over time, both for enjoyment and for the personalization of the client. Now, you may have heard from the American College of Sports Medicine or the Physical Activity Guidelines for Americans, the second edition, this number of 150 minutes of moderate to vigorous intensity or equivalent or more per week. And that is what's required to glean some of the minimum cognitive benefits from exercise. It means if you engage in exercise less than this prescription, you will still get cognitive benefits. But what research shows is that if you have this prescription, you're more likely to get those benefits than not. That includes changes in the size of the hippocampus, improvements in cognitive function, all the things research has showed over the past decade. Now, the role of the fitness professional is absolutely to get people to this level. Most people are engaging in a program that maybe is focused on balance or weight loss or pain alleviation, mobility, athletic performance, whatever it may be. But in the pursuit of those goals, we often lose sight of maintaining this minimum requirement for exercise and physical activity. And what we're looking to do is, one, get people here, and the behavior change strategies that a fitness professional should employ should help people get here. But what happens when we reach this goal? What happens when we actually hit 150 to 300 minutes? Do we just stop? Do we just assume that's the best we could do as health and fitness professionals? Well, we don't think so. And we think that different types of exercise and their acute variables yield different results, both cognitively and neurobiologically on the brain. And while there may not be enough evidence to make these claims for certain in different outcomes, we do know that we could do better. So if we have the foundation of 150 minutes, but the client has a goal of improved memory, or the client has a goal of improved attention, what can we do a little bit differently that's not so generic, that we think, according to early evidence, may help with improvements in those specific outcomes? Now, how does the brain actually change? Well, we have neurogenesis, as I mentioned, the continuous generation of neurons in certain brain regions. We have new synapses that get created, which is the connection between those neurons. And that happens with new skills and experiences, which is why it's important as a health and fitness professional to incorporate those. And then we have strengthened synapses, the repetition and practice that creates strong neural connections or strengthened neural connections. When we don't use these regions or these connections, we have connections in the brain region that are weaker in the form of weakened synapses. Now, in terms of synapses, we hear about these changes and we often think of high-level brain changes, that when the synapses change, the whole brain changes. That's not necessarily true. There's functional neuroplasticity and then there's structural neuroplasticity. This slide's more relating to functional neuroplasticity at the bottom two and structural neuroplasticity on the top two. This provides a bit more guidance on to how that works. And so synaptic modification can happen in milliseconds. And so you can have neuroplastic change in a very short amount of time, but its significance, if you look to the bottom, which is higher level brain changes, takes several months and years. Just above higher level brain changes, we have neuronal network changes, which takes several weeks and months. And then we have new brain cells, which takes several days. Before that, we have branching of synapses and dendrites, which takes several hours. And so as a health and fitness professional, it's important for you to understand the functional and structural neuroplastic changes that can occur, as well as their timelines. But if you look at the very bottom, this is sort of the goal that we're after. While it's very important to improve brain structure, we're also after improving brain function, or structure and function, considering that both of those things decline over the lifespan. Another reason that you have a lot of power as a health and fitness professional is because 80% of the gray matter in the brain seems to be modifiable by physical activity and exercise. And when you hear this and you hear about the imminent cognitive decline epidemic that's occurring globally, and you hear that this is an opportunity that, hey, I can actually create exercise programs that are novel, that are variable, that are stimulating, that are consistently followed, that are enjoyed, and I might be able to affect a significant part of that person's brain through doing that, that's a very encouraging role to play as an allied health and fitness professional. Now, the reason we'd want to integrate cognitive stimuli into exercise is because it makes sense evolutionarily. And so Dr. David Reichlin and his team created what's called the adaptive capacity model. And that capacity model is really focused on combining cognitive and physical stimuli because that's how we evolved. And so using the sensory and attention systems, using motor learning and control systems for tools and spears, using the spatial navigation and memory systems associated with the hippocampus, using the processing speed systems to slow down and speed up and run and be bipedal organisms, and using executive functioning skills like problem solving, decision making, and cognitive flexibility are really important for determining where our prey might go and planning. And so really we go into this in the course in depth, but when we're working out on an exercise bike or a machine and we're not really cognitively stimulated, those things are still healthy. You're creating neurotropic factors that are good for the brain, but it seems that we've missed out on incorporating cognitive stimuli into our exercise programs, even though that's how we evolved. So as society evolved, we did the exercise stuff over in one place, then we did the intellectual stuff in school and work in another place, and we completely disintegrated them. But the role of the fitness professional, given that slide I showed you on cognitive reserve, showing that there's an opportunity to provide novel, stimulating, cognitively demanding exercise solutions, this is a great evolutionary model explaining why we might do that and why areas of the brain responsible for thinking share deep, deep connections with areas of the brain responsible for moving. Now, this is a nice snapshot of a lot of research we have summarized and applied in a graphic that while we like to think that certain modalities target different areas of the brain, and while brain regions don't grow in one way and do not grow in another way. It doesn't quite work like that. It's more of a network approach. But we want to provide some examples of what research might be showing that different types of exercises, different inputs, sensory, skill-based inputs, different modalities like cardiovascular resistance training inputs, might have differential effects on brain structure, and different structures of the brain are responsible for different things. Now, generally speaking, if you look at the bullet points here, you'll see an increase in gray matter, increase in white matter, increase in cognition, whether it be learning, memory, executive functioning, task switching abilities, and also improvements in function, whether that be neuronal connections, whether that be synaptic function. And so all of these things are important when considering a multimodal exercise and physical activity program. And what we mean by multimodal is incorporating different modalities in hopes that we can have a more whole brain focused exercise and physical activity plan. We also go over this in depth in the Brain Health Trainer course. Another reason that we'd want our activities to be cognitively stimulating is because with no training, we have neurons that die off. With physical exercise, we have neurons that are gained, but if they're not stimulated, they may not remain. And then with mental training, we have neurons, let's say 4 neurons that we start with, but then we end up with the same ones, but the functional activity of those neurons may have changed. But with the combined, the mental and physical training, we have 4 neurons, we have 5 neurons, and then we keep those neurons, for instance. Another reason to incorporate cognitive stimuli is to actually increase the difficulty or increase the engagement of a client during a session. And when we can achieve this balance of difficulty and skill, we have what's called the flow state. And this flow state can allow us to gain additional health benefits, both psychological and neurobiological. And what happens is we may progress our clients physically, but are we progressing them cognitively? And so having a level of difficulty that progresses with the client is important, both for the brain and the body. And if we can keep them in a state of flow, there's not just health benefits, but you're likely to keep that client over a longer period of time. And this is a concept we go over in depth within the Brain Health Trainer course as well, but it's also something you can take away today and say, all right, if I'm struggling to get my clients to stay interested, or they're bored, or they're having anxiety or frustration or fear of failure, what can I do cognitively or physically to maintain or modify that task difficulty to meet their skill set? And conversely, how can I build their skills to meet greater task demands over time? Another thing we include in the Brain Health Trainer course is a interview resource. We have a packet of interview questionnaires to give to your client, whether they're a new client or whether they're an existing client. You want to sort of modify the conversation from more of a physical one to a brain health one. And this intake packet is consisting of multiple questionnaires and batteries that are validated by research. And these individuals can, your clients specifically can go through this and start to realize, wow, I have a preference for this, and actually show you that they have a preference for a certain program, or they have a goal of memory because they're afraid of losing their memory, or a goal of attention because they've noticed in their day-to-day that they're lacking attention, or they're feeling a general slowing and they have a goal of processing speed. And so it allows you to really understand their goals and have that brain health conversation at a higher level. But it also it gives you an opportunity to see opportunities to refer to allied wellness and medical professionals, which is really interesting when you're considering starting a medical fitness practice and you want to be able to work with these professionals. It's very impressive to a professional to say, hey, I'm a personal trainer. I applied this interview intake packet, and I found that this individual might have sleep issues, or I'm having a sense they might have memory issues or hormonal issues, or even depression, and that's why I'm referring them to you. And that can create a referral relationship that can really not just be good for your business, but really transform the lives of your clients. Within the course, we have interactivity. And so instead of just reading content or watching 3 hours of video straight, we have you go over content, and then we have you go through interactivity, like dragging and dropping things in the proper category so that you can apply your knowledge as you go through the course. So instead of absorbing tons of complicated neuroscience, we've broken it down simply, and we've created these interactive lessons where as you go, you're applying knowledge and demonstrating your understanding of the knowledge while also paying attention, because let's be honest, we're all distracted when we're trying to study. In addition, we have high definition videos that we've used from other researchers to explain various concepts like synaptogenesis. We have videos where I'm talking over more complicated graphics to explain the relationships, such as that with positive and negative neuroplasticity. We go over things like the neurobiology of exercise. And so within the course, you have, these 5 or 10 minute voiced over charts that are actually animated in real time so you can follow along. So you don't have the cognitive overload at looking at these complex charts and wondering what sense to make of it. And then, of course, we have at least, I think, about a 45-minute exercise library of cognitive and physical tasks. And I go over these in depth and how to apply them in your sessions and modify them, both progressions and regressions for any client. And it's not just the physical progressions and regressions, but also the cognitive progressions, regressions, something that is really quite misunderstood when trying to apply these dual task techniques or these cognitive physical training techniques. And with that, you're able to really keep your client in that flow state as we discussed. We also go over ways of using tools to gauge their cognitive load and even categorize theoretically what cognitive domain are you really trying to target here. Is it more of an attention exercise? Is it more of a memory exercise? And based on the goal of the client that you found during your intake, what might be ideal for them in terms of exercise techniques if you are an exercise professional, which most of you are, giving them exercise techniques. So without ado, Dan's going to show you the landing page here for the Brain Health Trainer course, and I'm going to stick around to answer some questions.
Yeah, awesome. Before I do that, let's take a couple questions from folks. Actually, we've got 3 already. Nick asks, and maybe you want to put your slide back up about the moderate intensity exercise, because Nick asks,
Sure.
Post 60, what does moderate intensity exercise actually mean? Which I think is probably a lengthy conversation. He says, we tailor our senior classes, quote, senior classes to varied abilities, usually less than programs structured for our younger clients. How do we balance the intensity level over age, decades to ensure maximum cognitive maintenance and improvement?
Yeah. So I think if I'm understanding your question correctly, moderate intensity exercise, well, there's low, there's moderate, and there's vigorous. And so it's certainly a relative consideration. It's not moderate for me or moderate for you, it's moderate for them. And it can be certainly looked at as a percentage of max heart rate, usually 65%. If you want to use a 1 out of 10 scale, 10 being the hardest, 1 being the easiest, probably a 5 or a 6. And you can consider a 7 in there, but it's moving towards vigorous. So that's what moderate intensity exercise would mean. And the research is typically referring to continuous moderate intensity aerobic exercise. But it can also be interval training. It can be resistance training. So it can apply to different modalities, if that answers your question.
Okay, great. Eric's asking, is there a short I think he means a sort of a quick cognitive assessment that you believe in that you can use in an exercise program to show cognitive improvements? So like, is there a short form cognitive assessment tool you'd use and then reassess someone maybe in 30, 60, 90 days?
Yeah, so the short or fast cognitive assessment, we have questionnaires within the intake interview process in the course that actually allow you to get numbers on certain cognitive abilities, but this is not an assessment or a diagnosis. It's a way of taking subjective experience. For example, I've noticed changes in my memory, and we give you a questionnaire where they can actually circle different numbers that may apply to them and get the degree in which it applies to them for various cognitive domains. We actually guide you through how to score that. So you end up what's called a cognitive functioning goal, or a CFG, and it can be one of the 4 cognitive domains in our course. It could be attention, it could be memory, it could be processing speed, or executive functioning. Now, of course, an individual can want to improve all those or struggle with all those, but we have you pick a primary CFG, and then we have you pick a secondary CFG. Now, the ironic use of those questionnaires is that I actually don't recommend that they're used as a reliable baseline test. It's more of a way of actually turning subjective cognitive information to objective information, and usually allows us to have enough ammo, if you will, to refer to a medical professional that can actually carry out legitimate, valid cognitive testing. And so we encourage this as a conversation starter so that you can get them to a neurologists to perform cognitive testing that actually serves as a real cognitive baseline.
Okay. Got several more questions here before I kind of give an overview of the site here. Scott asks, brain health is often hemisphere-specific balance. Movement for cerebellar cortical activation benefits from specific brain area input. Thoughts for fitness professionals in that regard?
Yeah, Scott, I think I know where you're trying to go here. There's a lot of discussion about the hemispheric lateralization concept, where it's the left hemisphere versus the right hemisphere. Unfortunately, that's not necessarily, I mean, certainly the brain has hemispheres and there's certainly hemispheric functions, but we don't talk about that in our course for a variety of reasons. A lot of that is sort of pop psychology and pop neuroscience, and it's actually very hard to apply in an exercise program. You can do, if you follow functional neurology or the brain gym theory, that you can, cross over the body and cross lateralization movement and corpus callosum and all that stuff. There's really not enough evidence for that. Certainly we talk about the cerebellum as well as different cortices in the brain within the course, things like coordinative movements or motor demands, if that answers your question at all. But we certainly go into different regions of the brain, different networks of the brain, but we also try to circumnavigate some of the myths around the brain in the course by teaching about what does have some good evidence.
Okay. Scott's got another question here in a second, but first, David asked, does the program have any specific advice for training or working with sight impaired individuals? Not directly or explicitly, David, but when it comes to working with sight impaired individuals, macular degeneration is probably the most common neurodegenerative disease, more so than dementia. And so we find that there is certainly a need for this, especially within the aging population. But what happens here is we do go over how to modify input, cognitive input, whether it's visual, whether it's kinesthetic, whether it's auditory. And so you might maybe bias towards auditory cognitive stimulation. So all of our drills, like the one I showed you in the video was a catch and throw drill with a ball, that might be contraindicated. But you can certainly use more audible cueing, which we go over in the course. Okay, Derek asked a great question. How do we implement this for those whose priority is not cognitive health? And how do we relay the validity of cognitive health over popular goals of, say, strength, weight loss, aesthetics?
Yeah, great question, Derek. Appreciate your question here. So that's going to be probably more common than not. And so I don't want to make the arrogant assumption that everyone just now cares about brain health more than what they came to you for in the first place. If they came to you for weight loss and you say, oh, I took this course and now I really care about brain health, and the client's like, well, I still care about weight loss. It's sort of like the client who wants to lose weight but has knee pain. You're not going to create an explicit mobility program. A lot of the times we can make sure that our exercise and physical activity plan at least meets the minimum requirements for brain health. And so if that person is looking for strength, but they're not incorporating any cardiovascular exercise, we can contextualize the need to integrate those modalities and contextualize it towards their goal. But we know in the back of our heads it's going to be good for their brains. And individuals that struggle to meet their goals might have cognitive issues, or they may need some additional coaching. And so improving cognitive health and brain health isn't just to prevent dementia or neurodegenerative disease or slow cognitive decline. It also helps achieve what they set out to achieve in the first place. And it also might be unnerving for the client to say, oh, you think you're a brain expert now? Is this all you're going to do? Not at all. It's just a component of the outcomes that we typically are not aware of for our clients. And even though we know exercise improves the brain, we typically don't do anything different about it. So hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah. I would add to that, Derek. I mean, it's sort of the same concept of, it's funny when someone in their 60s comes to me and they're like, well, I want to lose 50 pounds, and they're struggling with falling, right? It's like, well, we probably should work on your balance too, right? And so I think the reality is this is just going to give trainers a whole nother arsenal of tools to be doing stuff to improve people's cognitive function, which of course is going to keep them as clients for you a lot longer if you're impacting their entire life. So we've got several more questions coming in. I want you guys to keep typing your questions in, but I want to give a quick overview of the course. Ryan, if you can, Ryan, hop back on video with us. Sure. The first thing I want people to know is The course is available to buy now. You can buy the Brain Health Trainer certification today. It's actually at a $200 discount. But the course does not go live. We're not actually releasing it till around July 23rd. So right now it's in review stage. Ryan wants to get all the quizzes and test questions and interactive stuff just right. So we have several people reviewing it, which is an important thing to make sure we've got good feedback on the course. I've seen it. It's amazing. It's going to be the best looking course FAI has ever put out. So I just want to give kind of a quick overview because I know some people are going to ask, well, why a fitness professional for a brain health trainer course? Like, do I have to have an undergrad in neuroscience? Is Ryan going to completely overwhelm me? So, it's not designed that way. So I do want to say, the brain health trainer certification is it's really for you if you want to help your clients, have a better understanding of cognitive decline, have a better understanding of how exercise can impact that. If you want to be a powerful agent of change in your business, your personal life, and your community, I think one of the things that Cody and I like about it, Ryan, is that it's going to help trainers just take their training to kind of the next level. It's going to help them actually offer more opportunities and programs for people that are starting to notice cognitive decline, right? In fact, I think a lot of people don't even realize that if they're having some mild cognitive decline, that maybe seeking out a personal trainer is one of the best things they could do for themselves. And now you can actually be that solution in your market, which is a really cool thing. The opportunity, like you said, it's bigger than twice the size of New York City. And I think it's probably even twice the size of that when we think about how many people want to get ahead of it, right, and want to prevent it.
Correct.
I think about my dad in his 70s who really is very aware of this, right? Like he plans to live into his 90s and does not want cognitive function to decline, right? I mean, he's taking care of his physical health. He's competing at the national senior games. He plays on more softball teams than he probably should be allowed to. But the cognitive thing is important to him, right? So Ryan, tell us just a little bit more about sort of you and Sarah and, all the years, the clinical research and kind of all the years that you guys have put into this.
I've talked quite a bit about myself, but really I'm more like everyone here than you think, just with a very strong interest in neuroscience. And so I've been pursuing this through less, concrete education of certifications, but of course going for proper education with my master's in neuroscience, but also just sort of scrounging all the research to see what we can apply. In making the course, we've gone through maybe 327 research articles, I think is the final number here. And then Dr. McEwen is someone who's a fantastic collaborator and a mentor of mine. She is a PhD in cognitive neuroscience. She has published many studies about combining cognitive and physical training on the brain. She's currently the director of research and programming at the Pacific Brain Health Center, where I work now, where we continue to study this in randomized controlled trials. The National Institute of Aging continues to fund these studies as well as other different sponsors and collaborators. So we're applying this clinically in a medical fitness studio day in, day out, but we're also studying the effects of this. And that's mostly Dr. McEwen's work, as she is a research neuroscientist, but she's also a certified personal trainer. She has actually spent a good amount of time applying this in her own private practice. And so combined, we feel we are poised to deliver the best education to everyone here.
Okay, so let's just talk about how the course is broken down, and then we'll get back to your questions because we've got a few more questions that have come in. So I know you've broken it into sort of 4 main modules. Maybe just give us a quick 30-second overview of each of these 4 modules.
Absolutely. So the first module combines a couple different ones. Really, it's about brain science, cognition, the neurobiology of exercise. And it really talks about the science of aging. It talks about general concepts of neuroscience, defines cognition, gives examples of different domains, and then starts to move into module 2 when we're talking about what happens to exercise and the brain. In Module 2, we have the effects of exercise, physical activity, and their variables on the brain more specifically. And so we're going into things like what happens with cardiovascular exercise, what about steady state, what about interval, what about motor or coordinative training, what about resistance training. And we go through all the variables like open skill versus closed skill training and talk about how that may affect cognition and brain function. And then what we do is we go into becoming a brain health trainer, how to actually assess, how to program your exercise and physical activity plans, and how to refer to allied medical and fitness, wellness professionals. And then our last module goes into combining cognitive and physical training techniques. We have a 45-minute exercise library in which we are showing you how to apply these different techniques across different cognitive domains and exercises you're probably already familiar with.
Okay, great. We had a quick question come in on CEUs, continuing education. Obviously, it certainly is FAI approved for CEUs. We will be getting it approved by ACE and NASM. Any other continuing education organizations, Ryan, that people should be thinking about, and maybe some others outside of fitness that you're applying for?
We are certainly considering that. I personally would like to get this for as many organizations as possible. We know transparently that could cost more money, but I really want more organizations to be aware of this, and people who are certified in health coaching or people who are personal trainers or nurses. We really want to expand the impact of this since so many different professions can learn about the benefits of exercise in the brain and actually apply it differently because of that.
Yeah, so we won't know until the course is fully released, but we anticipate it'll be approved for 8 to 10 hours of continuing ed by ACE and NASM. They're excited about it, certainly FAI. And then beyond that, it really will come down to how many we want to pay for, APTA for sure, in different medical organizations. The interesting thing about continuing ed is how much it costs to get some of these courses approved. So sometimes we need to get a few people paying for the course. Some of the organizations, for example, it costs thousands of dollars just to get your course approved to provide CEUs. It's sort of an interesting side note. So tremendous content that you've developed here. Like I said, I've enjoyed looking through what I've seen so far. I haven't seen the quizzes yet, so I assume those won't be too hard. But it is available to buy now. The reason you can buy it now, obviously, we're looking to get some advanced sales before we release it. So we are discounting at $200 for people who buy now through July 16th. Any other questions for Ryan on his presentation today on this concept, even on the course? Go ahead and type those in. I've got a couple more here for you, Ryan.
Yeah.
Actually, Scott asked a follow-up question about sensory input. He says, do you add sensory input such as smell during exercise or movements to enhance memory?
Right. Scott, I have a feeling you're coming from the functional neurology realm here, and I appreciate it. We don't teach about that in the course. Certainly more sensory input can enhance memory, but we don't purposefully give smells during our exercise. The reason isn't because it's not important. It's just because we focus more on cognitive engagement during exercise because we find that's what's missing from most exercise programs.
Okay. Yolanda's asking, when you're working with someone that already has a medical diagnosis of dementia, who's clearly showing decline in daily activities, is the focus more on cognitive workouts such as balance, movement patterns, rather than physical progressive plans? Yeah. What's sort of the goal to slow the decline?
Yeah, so we really focus on maintaining activities of daily living and keeping them stimulated physically and cognitively. Certainly they won't be able to engage in really complex stuff or really cognitively demanding things. They may have trouble following instructions or navigating visual spatial demands or dual tasking. Really, it's about being able to maintain both physical and cognitive abilities to the best of your ability. It is a neurodegenerative disease, so you're not stopping anything. You may be able to slow it, and really your goal is to work with allied medical professionals to give them all the different things they may need, whether it's speech therapy, occupational therapy, physical therapy, work with their psychiatrist, and really become part of an integrated team. But a lot of people think that by incorporating cognitive physical exercises, you'll all of a sudden reverse dementia. They may just need cognitive stimulation and physical stimulation. Sometimes it's not appropriate to give it to them simultaneously, but incorporating those in your exercise program anyway is probably a strategy.
Okay. Martha says she trains a few people that have had strokes. Can I apply a portion of the questionnaire you mentioned to help my clients improve their brain functions?
Yeah, I don't see why not. And a lot of the dual task research or combined cognitive physical training research actually primarily comes from stroke and traumatic brain injury. And so I've done that before as well. And they do require more specialized care. And it's important to work with medical professionals for that. Sure, I don't see why not.
Okay, great. Nick says, thanks, Dan and Ryan. However, with group participants 10 to 15 and classes ranging in age from 65 to 90, I'm hoping that the course allows for a median approach around incorporating cognitive improvement exercises. He says it's hard enough trying to structure for moderate intensity following a formula when you have 10 to 15 participants ranging in a wide range of fitness and age.
Right. Yeah, we understand that. And by all means, I don't want anyone to think that moderate is the only intensity that you should incorporate for brain health benefits. There's brain health benefits with low intensity. So we look at Tai Chi, a mind-body exercise that has intellectual and physical demands. That's extremely beneficial for cognition, but it's not at a moderate intensity. Same thing with high intensity. It could be interval training. And so it doesn't have to be moderate, steady state exercise to get benefits. And of course, we're interested in working with FAI to create more group exercise solutions. And sometimes these cognitive physical techniques work best in a group exercise solution. I understand the management intensity can be difficult, but it doesn't mean that you have to meet a moderate intensity for it to be effective or beneficial.
Yeah, you should have seen 100 trainers at IDEA trying to do some of these cognitive tasks. That was a hoot. So you could definitely do it in large groups, and sometimes actually the large group provides some of the scenarios you're looking for. So, Deb's asking the question. Probably everybody's wondering if they haven't gone to the web page. How much is the course? So it's $599, Deb. And like I said, right now, if you buy it today, it's only $399. So it's on a discount until July 16th. And then it will be at regular price, $599, sometime after it's available live. So now is certainly the time to hop on, cost-wise. Any other questions from anyone? I think we've answered just about everyone. I got a couple comments in the chat box here. Let's take a look at those too. Martin says he couldn't be more excited about what you're launching here, Ryan. Really excited about the future of this course. Nancy answered the questions about CEUs. Will those purchasing the beta version before July 16th still receive CEUs? Absolutely. Nancy, you're not purchasing a beta version. You're just purchasing the course before it's actually released. So think of it this way. The course goes live July 23rd. That's when people can actually access it. But you're allowed to purchase it now in advance at a discount. So it's sort of like you're buying your ticket to the event ahead of time. CEUs will absolutely be available. Once you complete the course and pass the requirements, you get the CEUs from FAI, and we will be approving more and more organizations. So Evan Osar says, awesome info, Ryan. Excited to work through the course. Dr. Evan Osar, proud to have you here with us. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Evan.
I always wonder where in the world is Evan Osar, because I know he was headed to Hawaii last time I saw him. He's always
how he has the time to be here.
Always traveling. Yeah, always traveling somewhere. Now he's in Texas, he says. Yep, still not home. Brittany, love this content. Thank you, and thanks for making CEUs available, and thanks for the discount jumping on board, and 4 emojis that don't come through the chat box. So thanks so much, Brittany. Any other comments or questions for Ryan? We've got, 8 whole minutes. So we've got a little bit of time if anybody else has a question. Otherwise, if you're on the recording, because this is usually when somebody on the recording is like, but nobody asked this, I want to ask this. If you're on the recording, what's the best way to get their question answered, Ryan? Is there a direct page you want them to reach out to you? Is there an email you want them? Obviously, you can reach out to us at FAI anytime. contact@functionalaginginstitute.com, and Celia can relay those questions to Ryan. You can certainly visit this webpage, check out the course. Any other way you want them to contact you, Ryan?
They can go to ryanglatt.com, and I have a contact form there, and they're certainly welcome to contact me there.
Okay, awesome. So yeah, if you want to buy the course, the best place to go is the page I'm on right now, which is discover.functionalaginginstitute.com/brain-health-trainer-certification. And we will be making that link live on our homepage so people can find it faster from our homepage, because right now this is the first time we've released this. Nobody's seen this. It's not on our website. Nobody can find it. You guys are the first. So you're the very first to jump on. Couple more questions coming in. Anne asks, how many lessons are there? How long are they? Is there one final exam? How many quizzes? How much time does it take? So maybe walk us through that,
And it's
Ryan.
about a 6 to 8 hour course. We focus more on smaller quizzes along the way than one large final exam.
Yeah, so you broke it up into 4 modules. I tell people, Ann, it's probably about 8 hours. Some people might get through it faster than that. Some people might take more time with it. It's very interactive. How many quizzes
Also,
are there?
There's about 3 or 4, yeah.
3 or 4 quizzes? Okay.
And there's also additional reading that's not required. Of course, we give some of the research papers that we recommend reading if you're interested in that. That could, of course, add more time.
Yeah. Randy Bethel says, thanks. Emmanuel Ryan, this sounds amazing. Derek Welsh, great webinar. Thank you for the cognitive enlightenment.
Thank you, Derek.
There's one more here I'm missing. Oh, Nancy's asking, and this may just be a great comment for you to think about, Ryan. By any chance, will there be a Facebook group of trainers taking the course so we can collaborate?
Oh, I plan on it, and I plan on integrating or interacting heavily. You may regret having me give you research all the time.
Yeah. By being overly active, he means he's going to say, hey, check out this new research study. Who wants to discuss this in the next day or two?
I do have hyperactivity issues, so you'll regret that. Yes, absolutely.
All right. Awesome. Well, thanks so much for your passion in this area, Ryan. I think this is going to bring a huge resource to FAI. Again, for those of you listening on the recording, reach out to us, contact@functionalaginginstitute.com. If you're listening to this recording, you basically have till July 16th to save a couple $100 and jump into the course now. The course will be released live, so you can start participating in it July 23rd. So thanks so much, Ryan. Thanks for your time. And
thanks everybody.
Live. Thanks, everybody.
All right.